You're listening to Remotely One, a podcast that educates, entertains, and inspires you to take your life back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a former beer rep who left the warehouse to become a voice actor and digital creator.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds awesome. Let's clock in.
Great to meet you, Rick.
Thanks for coming on with us.
So what's new? What's new with you?
I'm in Maine, which is why I was wondering if you were going to be up here. I just got up here a couple days ago.
I'm going there in 3 days.
Are you also from Maine?
Yeah, we're from the same town. We went to high school together.
I didn't know that. Okay, I mean, Kaleem and I have talked about being from Maine. I didn't know that you were also from the same town. That's amazing. I'm from Falmouth.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people from Falmouth. That's great.
Love it. I love it.
Great little town. Okay. I'll be going to Pat's Pizza up in Yarmouth there in a couple of days. I reckon, yeah.
Hard to beat. Hard to beat. Are you coming up for a while or just a short visit?
I'll be up there for about 10 days.
Nice.
We're going to get to New Hampshire on Saturday and spend the day with my aunt and uncle and my cousins. And then we'll go to Westbrook. We'll go to Wiscasset. Then we'll go up to Bar Harbor. We got all kinds of stuff going on.
Wow, you're bouncing around.
I know. Welcome back, everybody, to Remotely One. I am your host, Rick. He is Kaleem. What's up, man?
What's going on, sir? You're looking great as usual, man. Looking great.
Can't complain. Cannot complain. And if I would, no one would listen.
I put a fancy shirt on today for our guest. I mean, it's... yeah.
Oh, man.
But today's guest, Rick, I probably should have wore suspenders, but we're going to get into that in a second.
Or some flannel.
Oh, yeah. Well, I should have worn my rubber slickers.
There you go.
Carried my boat pots. But here we go.
Here it is, Bob.
We're going to get into that. But since you know how to find us here at Remotely One, do us all a huge favor. Please go to ratethispodcast.com/remotely one and just leave us a review. It's not hard. It'll take 10 seconds or less, we promise. And if you could do that, that would be amazing. Since 2015, Remotely One is one of the largest communities of remote work professionals with over 2,800 Slack members and 4,000 subscribers. Holy shit, those are good numbers.
Yowza!
It's free to join, so go ahead and check it out at remotelyone.com. And with that out of the way, Kaleem, let's get into it.
Ooh,
we got a doozy.
Randy is back. Macho Man Savage. We back. You know what? We always get geeked up whenever we find out that one of our guests are from the 207. Our guest, she's a fellow Mainer, and she's from Falmouth, Bob.
Oh, Bubby, that's Fancy Town.
Oh, come on now. That's unfair.
Now, her first career job, sir, take a wild guess at what her first career job was. First job.
Picking lobsters apart.
Close.
Yeah.
Her first career job was scraping the barnacles. Off the bottom
That
of
is
the
a
ship.
grind, brother. She
was a former vice president at Citi. That used to be formerly the bank. I don't know what they call themselves now. Just Citi, I think. She kind of knows some things too, Rick. She kind of knows a few things. She's done some schoolings. She's done some educations. She has her MBA from just a tiny school, Columbia University Business School. Just a little business school. Yeah. Yep. She is the co-founder of a company called Kunik, which helps work with brands such as, ready for this, YouTube, SiriusXM, Wayfair, and IBM. They help build connection between employees through the power of conversation.
Oh, man, that's powerful. Yeah. I can't wait to get into that.
Just a few brands.
Yeah.
Listeners and viewers, please give a warm welcome to Liz Gulliver. Liz, let's go.
Hey,
Oh, the crowd's going crazy, bro. The crowd's going
Listen
crazy.
to all you guys. All right.
That's
You guys brought in the whole 207 today. You got them all in the house.
Settle down. 207 Falmouth in the building.
Oh, man, we're already off to a great start. You're a super sport for tolerating us this far, so thank you. Welcome to the show, Liz.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. I love talking to fellow Mainers. It's always a good day
we
when
love
that
it
happens.
too. Oh,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
you're in good company, yeah, I reckon, yeah. So, so in your words, we don't want the textbook definition here, okay?
All right.
Or what it says on the website. What is Kunik, and how exactly does it help organizations and employees?
Yeah, good question. So Kunik, we built Kunik to do exactly what Kaleem said. Bring people together for moments of connection, learning, and growth across the organization. Dig in and help people solve their people problems and do it all through conversation. So we bring in experts, they lead group-based dialogues, conversations, think about anything from onboarding, upskilling your managers, working with employee resource groups. As diverse as those people challenges are, we solve them all the same way. We bring people together. We do it because we think there's not enough conversation happening within organizations and there's a lot to learn from each other. So we bring in the experts to do the practical, actionable guidance, but the real core is getting your people learning from each other in that group-based setting.
They're just talking to each other. That's it.
That's it. But think
Wow.
think about you. You guys are from Maine. So you go back to any, old school, probably left Maine later than most other states, but from the smoke break, people being outside. Not a lot of companies in Maine have those fancy kombucha bars and foosball tables and all that, but smoke break, kombucha bar, open stand seating, food in the cafeteria, all of those culture building tools, they're all built around one thing. And it's all conversation. It's whether people are chatting outside smoking, whether people are at the beer tab you've got on Friday afternoons at WeWork, whatever it is, it's designed to get people talking. And so we said, okay, let's put some structure around that. Let's take that secret of culture building, put some structure around it, and get people talking where they're also connecting, learning, and growing.
Fascinating. It's so simple. I love it.
Yeah, sometimes not everything has to be an app. Sometimes there's room for something to not be an app.
So, can you actually elaborate a little bit on that? So it isn't an app. It's not. So you're a service agency,
Yeah, tech enabled. So we do everything. Some of our work, you mentioned SiriusXM. A lot of our work with them is in person. Kind of depends on the company. If they want to do, we do a lot of offsites, a lot of micro offsites for small groups. But I'd say about 70% of our work is online, so virtual, and about 30% is in person. So it is totally tech enabled. We do videos, we do transcripts, we do recordings. We send you back data about how people are joining the conversations, repeat people, especially if you're thinking kind of more programmatically. So think new managers, we're going to be testing skill development. So there's a lot of studying within it. There's a lot of data collected. There's a lot of tech enablement in it. But from a user, you said company and employees, right? So from the company side, they're getting all the information. If Rick is just working at the company and he is a new manager and he's also in a Male Allies ERG and he's also struggling with stress and burnout and he's also just really interested in a better onboarding process, he could be joining Kunik conversations across any of those. And for him, it's really seamless. Shows up in his calendar, shows up in an email from his manager. He joins the conversation, clicks right through to whatever it is you guys use internally at your company, whether it's Zoom or Butter or Teams or WebEx. I kind of hate WebEx, but everything else that it might be on, we host it on there. And so from a user standpoint, it's really seamless. And it feels like your company's out there providing this great resource and tool for you, but it feels very easy for you. You don't have to have a name and a password and a login and an XYZ. You're joining in and you're talking to your peers.
Wow. This is a really big idea. But at its core, it's also very simple. So where I'm curious is what experiences, and you've had a lot of really successful, great experiences in your career, but what was it that led to the discovery of this particular idea? And was there a certain moment that you can pinpoint where you decided that you definitely wanted to do remote work as a career?
I never would have labeled it as remote work to start with. So for me, it actually kind of the reverse of remote. I spent after business school, I was in finance before business school in the Boston area, went back to finance after, was in a CFO rotational program. So moved around, lived in 4 different countries. I was in the US, I was in Mexico, I was in India, and I was in Turkey in these different roles. And then came back, I was in 8 different cities. So different cities within those places. Final stop was Miami, where I'm based now. I came back and I realized that I loved moving around to all these places. It was really exciting. It was really energizing. Got to see a lot of culture. kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. The local cultures, the really remote satellite office cultures versus I started in HQ at the biggest office of all of them. So really saw these different ways that the offices were functioning within each other. I always think of culture as how do people talk with each other? How do they get work done? So I've seen these different iterations of it. What I realized in my last stop of that kind of 4-country, 8-city tour is despite being in all these places, and not to mention sitting in a CFO role, right? I'm thinking, okay, the company is putting a ton of money into me. They're sending me to all these places. That's got to be expensive. They're relocating me. And I felt so disconnected. I didn't feel like I really knew people. I didn't feel like I was really tied into the organization. I was getting an awesome paycheck, which is a great carrot, but there's very little beyond that. I didn't feel like I was seeing professional growth opportunities. I didn't feel like I was connected into the fabric of the organization, especially when I started thinking about having kids. The higher up I got in my career, not a shock to you guys, the fewer women that I was coming across anyway, because it's finance. So when I started thinking about having kids, and I was in a hypo talent development program, I was in an ERG, I was leading teams. Even with all of that, I still didn't know who am I going to ask about what it's like to have a kid here? Where am I going to go to get these answers? So all that stuff you can't Google, you can't look up in a handbook. I started thinking, man, I've been here years. I've been in tons of offices, and I don't feel like I have these intentional moments of connection, learning, and growth. And I'm somebody that the company's putting a lot of investment into. So I got to imagine other people don't. It was around that time that I had dinner with my co-founder, Josh, who was also finance pre and post business school. We were at school together. He was having a very similar experience. He was in the buy sides. He was hedge funds. He was public market facing. And he was saying, you know, I like teamwork. I like learning and growing with people. And I'm operating totally in a silo, in a vacuum, alone. It's just buy and sell stocks all day. I'm not really learning with people. When we started thinking purely from that financial angle, this doesn't make sense for organizations because people are leaving. And that's really expensive. That's really, really expensive. So we started thinking, how do you do it? And we went back and we solved one problem first. So we actually started Kunik focused on working parents. So we started saying, okay, working parents connects across every affinity group. So every different group, every different sector of your organization, and they connect your most recent hire to your most senior. People are caregivers. So I should say caregivers because we did caregivers all together. We started that pre-COVID, focused on what do caregivers need to stay in a company, because that's one of the segments that leaves in the highest numbers from organizations. So what do caregivers need? We interviewed over 1,200 caregivers. So we talked to a lot of people, and we heard really quickly two things. I want community. I feel really alone, and I want to learn from experts, but I don't have the time to go out and find them myself. But I want experts I can trust. So we started doing it really simply online, bringing those people together.
Now, Liz, to clarify something that you were talking about, because this is something that I think a lot of organizations are stating today as far as connection, as far as proximity meaning connection.
Yep.
When you were talking about yourself and organizations, you know, supporting you, you were going into these offices.
Sure was.
Just
Absolutely.
to clarify, this was not a remote gig before the pandemic. You're talking about going in an office, and you were still having those feelings of disconnection.
Profoundly.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And we started seeing this we no longer, caregivers is probably 2% of the work we do today. It's not much. But when we started with caregivers, it was pre-pandemic. So people were still sitting in their offices. And we would bring people together for these calls. And you would have people say, oh my God, we've sat, maybe it was on career development as a caregiver. How do you think about it? You'd have people who would say, I've sat in a cubicle. Rick and Kaleem have sat in a cubicle next to each other for 5 years. They both joined this call with our expert who's talking about this development. And all of a sudden you both realize you have kids the same age with the same name who both are autistic. And they sat next to each other for 5 years. That's a true story from a company we worked with. 5 years, never knew that. So they were physically proximate to each other, but there was no connection.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I mean, to have proximity be right next to each other and not really have a connection just goes to show that connection is not based on location necessarily. It's based on the conversation and the fact that this is prior to the pandemic. You all were using technology, tools, distributed tools to kind of facilitate these discussions. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And we had a lot of offices who were saying, okay, again, pre-pandemic, so their people were in offices, but they wanted to connect across their offices. Whether that was an office in New York and San Francisco or an office in London and Shanghai and New York, they were saying, okay, and that was very much what I experienced. We have all these offices. Aside from the fact that we're all paid out of the same company name on our checks, there's very little connecting these different physical locations. So a lot of it started coming from that. And by the way, when we started the company, Josh, or still today, Josh is based in LA, I'm based in Miami. Our hires, our team are all over the US and Canada and a couple in Europe. So we started the company ourselves too, fully remote pre-pandemic.
Now, how did your business change, or did you notice a change when everybody else was going remote?
Yeah. So what happened is we were already working with I guess you would say we piloted essentially pre-pandemic. We started about 6 months pre-pandemic. So we hadn't been in the game long at all when the pandemic hit. Fascinating. We built our whole, because we're nerds, right? We're business school nerds, we're finance nerds. We built out a whole game plan and everything. And it was all focused on going deeper into employee resource groups, going deeper into caregivers. What ended up happening overnight is we sold primarily chief human resource officers, so CHROs and CPOs. And they started calling us and saying, you are the only tool in our toolkit, again, to Kaleem's point, that's bringing our people together. We've given them an app. They have a meditation app. We've given them, access to LinkedIn learning videos. We've given them X, Y, and Z tools, but there's absolutely nothing that's bringing our people together. And overnight, everybody got sent home. So they said, can you do emergency crash sessions for, forget the caregiver stuff. Can you do emergency crash sessions for our managers? How do I manage a team overnight? Do you have an expert? Can you bring them in? Can you do one on team functionality and team communication? And how do they talk? And of course, you guys know, as a startup, we were like, absolutely, we have that person. We'll get you that person. And then it was all behind the scenes, who is that person and where do we find them? But that was very much what happened is the CPOs started saying to us, we don't have anything else that's bringing our people together. And I think exactly to your point, Kaleem, before they thought our people are connected because they were physically together. And then as soon as they were remote, they thought, oh my God, there actually is zero connection and these people don't even know how to talk to each other or how to think about building any sort of semblance of team in a remote setting, come in and help us. So that's where we started really early pandemic, pivoting into a lot of remote work support. Today, everything we do falls under employee experience. So it can be under learning and development, diversity, general HR. But for about the first year of the pandemic, I would say 95% of our work was focused on supporting this change into remote work, now remote and hybrid, but at the time, fully remote work.
Interesting. So you stated that you and your co-founder decided to start off remote right off the bat. You're in Miami now, and where's Josh based out of?
LA.
LA, so opposite coast. Was that just because of design? And once you started working, you're like, hey, we're just going to work this way? And now that you've kind of brought some people on to help you out, is this basically your model moving forward, do you think?
Absolutely. So it started out as, okay, we're both looking for career changes out of finance. He was settled in LA. I was settled in Miami. We both had kind of family and personal lives in those places. And we thought, honestly, at the time, let's give it 6 months to a year and see if we really start building a company. Presumably, we're going to have to be in the same place, and we'll figure out what that looks like. So we thought we'd have to be in the same place at some point. We actually even went in early and had some conversations with VCs. We're actually totally bootstrapped. We never ended up raising, but we kind of wanted to hear what do VCs think about this idea.
Interesting. As a service company too, right? Like that's different.
Yeah, but we went in saying we don't want to raise, and we don't want to raise. We never have. But because we come from finance, we had a lot of connections in the VC world. So we started asking people, because you know what? They ask tough questions that make you think about your business model. And so that's why we wanted to go in and have those questions. And interestingly to me, I thought they would say, how are you going to get these clients on board? How are you going to get... No, the question always was, well, you can't possibly build a company remote. You and your co-founder have to be in the same city. We would never fund a company that's remote. We heard that every single meeting we went into. You guys can't be serious about doing this because he's in LA and you're in Miami and it's never going to work. And we heard that every single meeting we went into. And then the pandemic happened, and so we never ended up moving to the same city. And now, and we started remote, now we stayed remote, and we have people, amazing talent. I mean, I don't need to tell the two of you this, amazing talent that if we were one city located, we would never have. And on top of that, our company's fully global. So we host sessions in APAC and EMEA all the time in different time zones. with different language support, et cetera, et cetera. So having a fully remote global team is a huge advantage to us because it allows us, I think 98% of our companies, we looked at this the other day, are US headquartered, but within that, it's about 80% who have at least one office outside of the US. And so we support all of their offices. We don't just support their US office. So just today, I had a teammate who's based in Boston. He loves working with us because he has very flexible work. He was up at 4:30 this morning doing a call with one of the India teams from a client of ours. And he's totally happy to get up and do that because then he's taking some time off this afternoon to be with his kids when they're out of school. And so we're able to employ people like that who need flex time, who need all of that, that if we were forced to think only in LA or only in New York or only in Miami, we'd never be able to source that talent, I don't think. And our experts too. We work with about, I think, and I know this because the tax season just happened, we have about 389 1099s. So we work with a lot of experts, and they too are based fully globally. They are all over the world in every remote pocket you can think about, fully remote. And they come in and they do this support with us, and we do expert roundtables and bring them all together, and it's become a really strong community. Kaleem, Chris Dyer, who works with us, who you and I are both friends with, he's gotten to know a lot of experts through us. So it becomes a very tight-knit community where people get to know each other. And most of them never meet in person. I didn't meet half the people we worked with until they had been working with us for over a year because we had to hire them during COVID, and I just never met them.
Yeah, I know that's exactly where I'm coming from. Like, I had never met any of these professionals before I started this podcast, and, you know, rubbing elbows with Chris Dyer in Washington, D.C., and chatting it up with Chase Warrington on the podcast. I mean,
oh, I love Chase. Chase has done some work with us too. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, and Chase I've never met in person. I love Chase. I've never met him in person still. Chris I just met in person recently. So some of these experts we work with all the time. They do 3, 4, 5 expert calls a month for us. And many of them we still haven't met in person. We hope to. We try and get around and meet as many as we can. We do mini offsites and mini retreats and stuff, just like you guys did in DC. But it takes time to meet. You build your network really fast remotely, and then it takes time to meet all of them in person.
Yeah, yeah. So a second ago, you mentioned, just to backtrack a little bit, you mentioned contractors, 1099s.
Yeah.
What do you think in terms of contracting and remote work moving forward? Like, how do you see that business contracting and remote work people moving forward?
Oh, I
coming
think
out
it's
of this
gonna
pandemic?
Continue to explode.
Yeah.
I see that as nothing but a straight up and to the right. I get asked, and I'm sure you guys get this on your LinkedIn too. My LinkedIn becomes a firestorm of people messaging me and saying, hey, I see what your company does. I see you work with experts. I know such and such expert who led a call for you for IBM, for whomever it is. I'm thinking about leaving my job and becoming a remote work, setting myself up as an LLC and working remotely and doing coaching and doing manager training and doing exec work and working with employee resource groups and being an individual DEI consultant, you name it, everything under the sun. I get hundreds of those a week. Do you have any clients that I'd be a good fit for? Now, we have a really intensive vetting process. You can't just reach out to us and then we're going to put you in front of Wayfair, as Kaleem mentioned earlier, right? We have to understand what are your credentials, where do you come from? But for us, it's actually great because we look for expert practitioners. So I don't want to go in. We work with, a lot of first-time managers. I don't want to go in and lead a 10-part peer cohort, 20 managers, divide all your managers into groups of 20 or 30. They're going to meet every 6 weeks for 10 weeks. I can't bring in somebody who last led a team 20 years ago and has just been writing about it.
Right.
They haven't, so for us, from a business model perspective, it's great. From a just kind of macro perspective, I think that's going to continue to explode. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. I also know some people who are 1099s who do 48% of their work with an Amazon, with a Google, because they want to stay right under that 50% to not have to do full-time benefits or anything like that, but we'll do 48% of their work with a big company who has brought them in for a project-based thing, for a ongoing work thing, and then they'll use their other 50% on things like us with other people where they're doing kind of more hourly, a little bit more one-off focus. So for them, it works out really well. They've got something more stable, and then they've got a lot of flex on the other side of it.
I want to talk about the employee experience in general.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's getting a lot more press, or just, I've always loved the term. Like, we've kind of moved away from just talking about employee engagement to the experience and engagement being part of that employee experience. I love Gallup's kind of breakdown of how they map out the employee experience. For you, what are the types of challenges that clients are coming to you with Are you having to explain to them what the employee experience is? Or are they coming to you specifically with the challenge of, hey, I need help with, and what is that thing? And then are you educating them about what the experience is, or do they already kind of know what it is and that's why they're coming to you? How's that looking?
It's kind of a 50-50 divide, I would say. So about half do, and to your point on engagement, I think employee experience is just starting to gain some traction as a term, as an overall thing that people look at. That said, I think people have identified what it was without putting a label on it before. So they've said, okay, our people aren't feeling like they have enough growth opportunity, or aren't feeling like they've had enough development, into their skills or their roles or whatever it is. They just didn't necessarily group that
Coming
under
with one
EX.
symptom, like kind of coming with a symptom.
Exactly. So I would say half our people come to us and they've done an engagement survey, which are really powerful tools. Yes. The challenge is a lot of engagement surveys give you fantastic insights and data, and then don't lead you with where to execute, what to do. I always imagine it like a big dashboard in front of me, and it's like, this is what's red, this is what's kind of blinking yellow that you might have to work on. This is green and you're doing great, but it doesn't tell you, okay, this is red, here's what we should do about it, right? It's just, here's where you need to put your focus. And then the question is, do you have an internal team who's solving that? Most of the time, the answer, you read some of our biggest companies out there, T-Mobile, massive team. Even there, they have a full EX team who we partner with, but they still don't even have the resources to handle it all internally because it's just so vast, right? So most companies, maybe outside of like Patagonia, most companies are going to need some kind of external support on this. So we often will come in, and that's the person who says, okay, we know exactly where our issues are because we have all the data from an engagement survey. Help us structure a solution here. We'll sign an NDA, great. We'll dig into their data. We do that a lot with Culture Amp partners, Glint, Virgin Pulse surveys, all of that kind of stuff. People will come to us and say, we have the data. We don't know how to dissect this data. We don't know what to do with this data, and we don't know how to make a game plan. Help us kind of identify where to go. So that's one half. Okay. The other half come into us and they say, we've been hearing rumblings, or we've been kind of seeing in exit interviews, or we've been noticing trends in performance reviews. So a little less focus, a little less data. They usually come to us with one or two challenges, and then we like to back up. So our first 1 to 2 calls with a client are somewhat consultative, where we really want to understand what are the challenges, what are the goals, and who are the populations you're looking to support. And we rarely will say, hey, let's attack all of that at once. So we'll say, okay, this needs to be first order priority. But a big part of that is also understanding, what does your C-suite want to focus on, right? And I think that's where we've been noticing a big disconnect.
For us, we generally, so you all definitely work with much larger clients from that perspective, because for us, if we can't talk to the founder or at least the COO, it's very difficult to get some of those things to move forward without some of that.
It is.
Top
but that's true
help.
At every level, right? We have, our smallest company is 50 people. So we work with a range. We work with 50 up to about 200,000. So huge range of employee size, huge range of industries. But that Kaleem holds true across all of them. And difficult. Often what we hear is that the person who calls you in, they don't know. They don't necessarily have that open line of communication to know what a COO or a CEO or a CFO even is really focused on. And then you're just trying to solve a problem without understanding what the real goals and initiatives are over here, and so you can't get any. So I agree with you.
Yeah, at some point last year, we held an unconference event. It was Relead, remotely won. We put on Relead, which was an unconference event for remote professionals. Those unconferences are interesting, and for people who don't know what they are, Liz, I'm going to let you explain what they are, but why did you decide to put on an unconference style type of an event?
Yeah, it's a good question. I imagine since you did Relead too, you also know they're a heck of a lot more work than you probably think going in, or at least they were for us, because we're like, oh shit, there is a lot to do here. But we started it honestly just talking to our partners, and we kept hearing from, you and I also bumped into each other at Vegas at one of these big ones, and we kept hearing from people, I'm tired of sitting through performative kind of keynotes. I'm tired of really surface level panels. I want to actually understand, what are my peers struggling with? How are they trying to approach it? What's working and what's not working? And they said, I never get to sit down and roll up my sleeves and do work with other people who are sitting in the same position as me or dealing with the same challenges as me. And everything I go to is all about sales and keynotes and somebody trying to get their name out there. And so we thought, okay, that's easy enough. We can put together something for you guys. So we invited, our first one was about half clients,
First, Liz, what is an unconference for some people?
Well, I don't know if you may have a totally different definition. We call it an unconference because there's nothing conferencey about it. There is no keynote, there is no panel, there is no set agenda. It's all kind of very focused on pure connection. So it was all about let's talk, let's have dialogue. I mean, kind of like we do within our companies anyway, but it was all let's talk, let's work through things together.
I think we kind of exactly it, but I think the one piece that I always try to add in is that the programming is put together by the attendees who are attending.
Yeah.
They decide the topics. Like we asked everybody, what's your biggest challenge? And then what's your biggest success story? And it was a day and a half of unbelievable conversations. And we only had 12 people at our unconference. And I thought it was just great. So I'd love to know, how did yours go?
We do the exact same thing. So we ask, sometimes it's just in calls we have beforehand. Sometimes it's as they sign up. We cap at 40. We would never go above that. We've kept it at 40.
Nice.
And that includes the experts from our side. So it's really like 30 attendees plus about 10 Kunik team members who are just supporting it in different capacities. And agreed, it's all from that. We also ask people who's willing to get up and do something we call HR Fight Club, which is really fun. Have you guys ever played that?
No. What is this? What is this?
It's a great happy hour game. So you put out a prompt and you have teams that are yay and nay, and you either do individuals or teams. You can set it up either way. But it's something you could say remote work is the future. One team's yay, one team's nay, but they don't get to choose, and they have to fight each other. And then the people who aren't participating vote on it. And you do different things like fertility benefits are discriminatory. I mean, you try and get them as spicy as your group will allow. And you make people fight it out on it. It's great.
So you have two groups that are basically arguing either side, and then you have like a jury or whatever that you're trying to convince.
Exactly. You've got a jury that gives a point to each round, and they're only 45 seconds, so you got to go fast. And people get. The deeper into happy hour you get, they get spicy up there, and it is fun to watch. So that should be a game at your next unconference.
Well, you're coming next time, definitely.
I will happily. I would love to.
Definitely.
That would be great. That would be great.
But we also do something give get. Do you guys do this? I think you'd like this at your unconference. So you have to put on a green sticky what you can give to the group.
Brought to you by Kunik. Be there or be square.
No, absolutely not brought to you by Kunik. We are a startup. We do not have that kind of bandwidth. No question. But you should do this one because your people will like it. Green give, red get. What you can give to the group, what you can get from the group. And where I was going with it is it's directly to you. This was 35 CPOs, COOs, heads of DEI, heads of L&D. You know what the number one word on the get sticky was?
What was it?
Connection. These are leaders, most networked into their organization.
Money. Get money.
But they already got the money. They're already in the C-suite. They're earning that top dollar, and they still number one word. What do I want to get? Authentic connection, stronger community, build my network, connect to other people. Number one thing on those red stickies. And these are the people the most connected within your organization. This is C-suite. These are the people dialed in at every level, and the thing they were most after was connection. So if they need it, just think about that trickle down throughout the entire company there.
Yeah, if they need it, other people definitely need it for sure.
For sure.
So Liz,
yes,
level with us here, okay?
Yeah.
What stands out in your mind, your whole remote career? What was something funny or maybe even inspiring that really sticks out to you that you can recall and share with our audience?
Oh, inspiring, I like.
While working remotely, of course.
Yeah, of course. I mean, listen, for me, on a family side, I am due with my third kid now in August 1, and I've had all three of my kids while working remotely while building this company, which I could have never done in my career in finance.
Congratulations, number one.
Thank you.
Congrats, number one. Well, congrats, number three.
Number three. Congrats, number three. But that I continue to think about for people of all sorts of different challenges. So to me, that's the inspiration part is I was able to I worked right through it, and that's my style, right? I didn't want to mat leave. Yep. I think everybody gets their own choice around that. For me, I had the kid, was able to get back into things. I have a really supportive network around me in Miami, so I had a lot of help. But I think that on the inspiration side, being able to become a mom while building a company and working remotely has changed the way I ever thought about family and career. It's 180 from what I would have thought working in finance.
I mean, get it.
Bravo.
Get it. That's
Bravo.
Becoming a mom.
But that
mom.
comes with its challenges. It comes with its challenges. There's a lot of naked kids behind me, a lot of
Oh, there it is. There
kids,
we
you know.
go.
Well, and the worst, I'll tell you, you guys are also Mainers, so you know Maine was like doing really well during COVID. So I had not really an idea of bringing up my firstborn, my husband, my dog, my in-laws, my sister-in-law, and we all went and lived in my parents' house for 9 months in Falmouth together.
Wow.
During
What?
COVID.
We
And
did
there was-
6 months. We did 6 months. We
I
did
can't.
March
I mean,
until
God
June.
bless you.
Well, 3
God
months.
bless you. It was, and I was pregnant with my second, and so we thought, okay, I'm pregnant. My father-in-law's older. We're gonna get out. We're gonna go to Maine. Same reason you went up there for 6 months. I remember sitting probably in the same room. First, my dad comes in because he's retired. He comes in, he brings me an espresso. Then my father-in-law comes in, he starts fixing some wires behind me. Then my mother-in-law comes in, and I swear to God, I think people are thinking, why does she have like old people slaves working for her? Like, it was terrible. Like, they're probably like, oh my God, this woman has all these old servants. Like, I was talking to people who don't know me. Why did she have old people's servants? Like, it was awful. And I was like, oh my God, everybody needs to leave. The boundaries have got to become clearer. Because for sure they thought I was like taking advantage of old labor. You know, these people can't get jobs. She's going to employ them. Like, terrible, terrible, terrible visuals on that.
She's running this whole operation out of a nursing home. We got to fix this stuff.
She's got the whole nursing home back there working for her. That's 100% how it looked, and it was awful, awful.
Wow.
But also moving your whole family up to Maine during COVID. God bless you, Kaleem, for doing that, because that was a journey, huh? We've never connected on that before. Whew. That was a lot.
Yeah. Goodness gracious. Well, Liz, you've been a super sport tolerating us for the
Thank
last
you.
45 minutes or so. Where can our listeners
pleasure.
find you?
GetKunik.com or Liz at GetKunik.com. Very easy.
What about your social handles?
Oh,
Throw your social handles
LinkedIn.
out.
I only do LinkedIn. I don't even have Instagram. It's terrible. No Twitter, no nothing. But Liz Gulliver on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming by the show. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Peace.
Bye.
Take care. You've been listening to Remotely One. Visit us at remotely1.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.